Hi, how you doing today? It is good to be here with you, and it's a beautiful day here in Minnesota, and we're getting ready for the start of the state fair. A lot of exciting things have been happening this summer. We just got done with the Olympics, which, when I read today's reading, kind of made me think about for a moment because if you watched any of the Olympics, like most people do, and I certainly did, um, it's great to see so much patriotism. Everyone seems to love their country and are proud of it and wave the flag. But I got to thinking that it kind of relates to our readings today, much like us, the people of Jerusalem and Judah, were waving their flag, and like we always tend to do, we tend to remember the good parts of our country and disregard or forget about those parts which aren't so savory. And that's true of all countries, and it's true of all people. We in the United States are certainly not immune to that. And that was kind of the case here with the people of Jerusalem. And we have these two accounts. The first one about the two sisters, and then the second one about the cooking pot. And I want to touch on those. In between that, we have the references to now what's happening, the second exile. Remember, the first Judean exile happened in 598. We've been in this interim period all the way down to 586, and now here we are, January 15th, 588, and that's actually the date that's being spoken of here when Nebuchadnezzar actually starts putting the siege ramps up on Jerusalem and beginning that process. And the Bible almost asks us to say, where were you on January 15th of 588 when everything that had been prophesied was now coming true? And I think two words that came to mind for me in all of this today in our readings were offend and depend. The people did not realize how much they were offending their God. And on the other hand, the whole point was God was upset because they were not depending on Him alone. Those things are the things we really want to take to heart today, too. So let's take a quick look at these two wonderful allegories, stories, accounts, descriptions, and try to put some perspective on them. The first one are these two sisters as prostitutes, very graphic. In fact, Ezekiel 23 is considered probably the most graphic chapter in the Bible. Oholah and Oholibah, and of course, it's pretty obvious. We don't really need to have someone explain it to us. The story kind of takes care of itself. Oholah represents Samaria, northern kingdom. Oholibah represents Jerusalem, the southern kingdom. And these two prostituted themselves, and actually, as we read today, not even just prostitution was considered adultery, because in the end, really, Yahweh made that covenant. They were not unmarried women in that sense. They were married to their God, and thus were adulteresses as well. By the way, Oholah means tent, and Oholibah means my tent within you, in case you wanted to understand the Hebrew for this. Now, what's interesting, I also found out, is that because this is such a graphic chapter in the Bible, in the Jewish tradition, this was the last chapter to be studied and taught to young men who were working in the tradition of studying to be rabbis. And it was thought to do that because this chapter had the most potential to offend the sensibilities of these young men. Aha, offend. Isn't that clearly the whole point today? I also jotted down, I first put down how much more graphic can we get, and then I read the commentary, and I thought, well, that's what it was meant to do. And I wrote down a comment that came to my mind, and it was, oh, okay, when you put it like that. In other words, God has tried every which way but loose to get the people in shock to say, oh, come out of their stupor or whatever it is they've deluded themselves with. And here it's like He does what probably is the most graphic and the absolute most shocking to the people. Because in those days, for the Hebrew people, prostitution and adultery were grave offenses. As you know, adulteresses were stoned, and they took that way more seriously than we tend to do in our culture today. So this gave great offense to them. as God intended, to show how offended he was at their behavior, their idol worship, and all of the things that were described, including sacrificing their own children on the altars to idols. So we have this account. First of all, Oholah is Samaria. She's really certainly a younger city than Jerusalem by chronological order, yet because she became totally depraved and ultimately the northern kingdom was wiped out, in this allegory is considered to be the older sister in this case. But nonetheless, that doesn't really make any difference. The point is, Oholah is totally wiped out, and now God is speaking to Oholibah, Jerusalem, and to what he is going to do. Because they did not depend on God, rather they made all sorts of alliances and tried to offer themselves up to other kings and other countries in the world and other nations. And that really is the grave offense here, rather than trusting in the Lord. So we have this first account and the ultimate destruction that will happen to them. And it's almost like what goes around comes around, and they've listened to nothing else, and now we know that the end is near and is coming upon them. The second account is this January 15th, 588. We have this cooking pot, and in there, there's one point at which what's really being described here is a self-cleaning oven. I don't know if you, like us, have a self-cleaning oven. You turn it on hot, and it literally cooks everything to ash, so it's easy just to wipe out. And that's what this is really describing here, as opposed to what the people thought. Because in Ezekiel 11, verse 3, there's this popular saying that says, this is the pot and we are the meat. And Ezekiel said it there first, and that was in this period from 598 to 586. And basically the people were thinking, yeah, we are the choice meats in this cooking pot. In other words, everything around us is being destroyed, but we're the choice meats, and so we're in Jerusalem, we're being protected. They literally thought about themselves in a very positive light, even during this interim period from the first exile to the second, that somehow that meant that God was keeping them and that they were special. We twist things around. We try to see the good in ourselves rather than the bad. And the truth is, most research says that most people have a higher opinion of themselves than they should. So they've got this idea that they are the special choice meats, and what does God do with it? Well, basically, he says, yeah, take those meats and put them in there and cook them really good, boil them until there's nothing left, and then just take them out and throw them away. I don't care what you do, they're all the same, they're all lousy and miserable. And then you're going to take that pot and put it on the heat, on the coals, which is what they did, and they heated it and ultimately burned what was inside to the point where it was just ash, could be wiped out, and the pot could be used again, like a self-cleaning oven. And so we have these two accounts, which really are like the last descriptors God's giving of what he thinks of the people of Jerusalem here. And now the siege engines are rolling up against the walls of Jerusalem, and Nebuchadnezzar and his army are there, and they're coming over the walls, and that will be the end of Jerusalem as we know it here. And so we're left with a number of thoughts, and what came to my mind is, do we ever wonder what kind of offense we give to God when we chase after the things around us? And number two, what he's reminding us is that it is in him alone we should depend, not in our popularity, our wealth, our material goods, even the people we surround ourselves with, but rather depend on him alone in all circumstances. And that's what the children of Israel failed to do, and that's what gave God great offense. And Lord, I pray today that I might be someone who depends totally on you, and thus not give offense. And that's a tough challenge, because we all like to think better of ourselves. So I guess I'm going to pray for a little bit of humility today, and a little bit of reality to know who I am and how much I need God in my life. and surrounding me with His presence every day. I pray that for you as well, and we'll look forward to talking with you again.